Just make the fight disappear. Like a ghost. I call them ghost fights. Fights that happen that people just want to forget that it happened. They just want to move on and look at all the other fights, because perhaps that fight shows some vulnerability in their fighter. Perhaps that fight wasn't the right decision at the end of the fight. So they just want to forget about that fight and just move on. Talk about something else. Let that fight go. It's the past. Ghost fights. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. And the first fight that I'm going to talk about is Devin Alexander versus Marcos Maidana. I think this is a fight that happened not too long ago. What was it, last year? And I think, it was both guys' trips first fights at 147. Maidana was coming up from 140 and Devin was coming up from 140. So two guys coming up from 140 meeting at 147 pounds. And, we didn't know how either guy really would perform at the weight, but for the most part, we had such high respect, such high what's the word I want to look for? We had such belief in Maidana for the fact that this guy was very relentless and powerful. Such high hopes, such high expectations, and we thought he was going to run through Devin. And we thought Devin was going to get stopped. At least majority of people did, at least. I know I did. And in fact, it ended up being the other way around almost. People like to forget, but Devin Alexander almost stopped Marcos Maidana. He almost stopped him at one point in that fight. I thought he was going to stop him. Had it been a different referee, perhaps they may have stopped the fight at one point. I cannot remember the exact round. This is a fight now I haven't seen for a while. I need to go back and rewatch the fight, but I can remember one of the rounds where I thought the fight was very close to getting stopped. And had it been a referee like the referee in the Maidana Josecito Lopez fight that just happened this past on Saturday, perhaps they may have stopped that fight and Devin would have been awarded with a TKO stoppage over Maidana. He would have been the first to do it. But Devin ended up winning a unanimous wide decision over Marcos Maidana. And Maidana was allowed to continue to the 12th round, which was good. Maidana's a warrior. He deserves it. But people seem to forget that fight against Devin Alexander versus Marcos Maidana. And I don't think Devin gets too much credit for that win over Maidana. I don't know if it's because Maidana had moved up to 147 and people look at him like a true 140-pound fighter that's more of a threat down there. Perhaps people thought Devin should have faced him when he was at 140, but maybe he avoided him. I don't know, whatever the case is, but that's just one fight that seems like a ghost fight to me that people like to forget. Another fight to me is Juan Manuel Marquez versus Manny Pacquiao, and it's their second fight that happened in '08. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember when Pacquiao faced De La Hoya, but didn't Pacquiao face De La Hoya in '09 towards the end of the year? Or was it 2010? I'm not sure. I think it was '09. I'm not sure. But giving whether it's '09 or 2010, shame on me for not doing that little bit of research before I even did this vid. But regardless, Pacquiao, after he beat De La Hoya, was made to be... that's the fight that took him to another level. And he was made to be invincible. He was. He was being very much hyped up by the media. And that's not to say that he is a bum. It's just to say that the media was hyping him up. Because that's what the media does. They hype up fighters, especially after you get a big victory. No matter what the fighter is, they hype you up. And so Pacquiao was being very media hyped. Is the fight that rose him to superstardom to another level. And just a year or 2 years at best, he lost to he didn't lose to Juan Manuel Marquez, but he was given a close fight. I think we can argue that all the fights with Marquez were close. Besides obviously the latest one that took place last year. But all Marquez and Pacquiao fights were close, and for the fact that Marquez showed that Pacquiao is not invincible every time he fought him, people were making Pacquiao to be unstoppable. You know, it isn't until Pacquiao fought Marquez for the third time that people realized, came to back to common sense and labeled Pacquiao as a human being again and not this machine that can't be stopped. It took a third fight before people realized that, and even before the third fight, give or take the Shane Mosley fight, where some were drawn to the conclusion that Manny Pacquiao is now losing his legs, because the Shane Mosley fight he started to look different, and then the third Marquez fight happened in which Marquez got robbed. But I just found it funny that second fight, it's like people like to forget about it. When Pacquiao beat De La Hoya, he was invincible. He couldn't be stopped. Nobody can fuck with him. And I think that was a little, too much, too much. And I liked Manny Pacquiao, and I realized he was at the top of the game and very unstoppable at that time. But all I'm saying is he wasn't invincible. To make a man invincible is to take it to another level. Like, nobody can fuck with Pacquiao. That's how some people looked at it. And it's like, relax. What, a year ago or 2 years at best, the guy was given a very competitive fight by a man named Juan Manuel Marquez in their rematch. But people, seem to like to forget about that at that time when he had beat De La Hoya. Another ghost fight. Another fight I think that's a ghost fight is Adrian Broner versus Ponce De Leon. I mean, that fight was a close fight. And, when I watch that fight, I hate scoring it because it's very hard to score. Ponce De Leon at times was pushing the action, but very ugly, awkward fighter. It ain't pretty, man. His style ain't pretty. And his shots he throws, they were hitting Broner, but they weren't like landing. The guy's not like turning his hands. He's not turning his punches. He's just throwing these wild, unorthodox punches, and he's not landing. Broner's landing some clean, solid counters, but he's only throwing like sometimes 3-4 punches all around. And De Leon's really hitting him, but you could say De Leon's hitting him with, I don't want to say pity pack because De Leon packs a punch with power, and that's just his style. He's an awkward motherfucker when he lands. He's not pretty and sharp and accurate. No, that's not him. He just throws punches, but because he has power, even with a punch that's not thrown correctly, he can hurt his opponent. But the punches he were throwing, here and there were landing at Adrian's face, but for the most part, he was going to his body, hitting his upper chest, And Broner was turning with the punches, but at the same time was getting hit and wasn't throwing back no shots at all at some time. So it's hard to give Broner the round, but at the same time, some of the shots Ponce was throwing, he was missing. He wasn't landing cleanly. And Broner wasn't doing much. I mean, out of all the fights I've scored in my life so far, Ponce De Leon versus Broner is some of those rounds are very difficult to score. Honestly, I would be. I hate to call draws, but I think I almost called the fight a draw when I scored it the last time. I think I did call it a draw, not almost. I think I did call it a draw. And then other times I seen it, you could have it a point or two for Broner or a point or two in favor of Ponce De Leon. But regardless of how you had the fight, the fact is it was a close fight. It's not easy to score, but regardless, it was a close fight. And Broner, who is blowing himself up to another level that he hasn't achieved yet, for all the Broner-tars that are forming, slowly but surely, take a look back at Ponce De Leon fight. Although I think he has improved, but how many times do we say, oh, well, he's improved? Well, he has improved, but look what Gavin Reese was able to do. He was able to touch him. So the Broner that improved so much from the Ponce De Leon fight got touched up a bit by Gavin Reese. Sometimes these things are a sign of things to come in the future. It's just something to think about. Another ghost fight to me, and at the time, this guy really hadn't blew to the superstardom that he has now. Although now he might be, nearing the end of his prime or possibly out of his prime. Sergio Martinez. Now, Martinez didn't blow up big until he knocked out Paul Williams unconscious in that second round, right? But the thing about this is when he lost to Paul Williams the first time, and by the way, I thought Martinez won the first fight as well. But it was a close fight. But I felt Martinez edged it out. But when he lost to Paul Williams the first time, after that, I believe that's when he faced the Ghost. Speaking of ghost fights, Kelly Pavlik. And I felt Kelly Pavlik had a lot of good success in that fight, and he really didn't start having problems really with Martinez until Martinez landed a punch that opened up a cut. And that cut was a very, very bad cut, and the blood was leaking right into Kelly Pavlik's eye, blinding his vision, affecting his vision. Had a cut in a very unfortunate spot on his face. And I can't remember that fight exactly, because I haven't seen that fight for a while. But what I do remember is Pavlik had some success. He was winning rounds against Martinez, and then the cut just made the fight easier for Martinez. For the fact that Kelly now was blinded by his own blood, and Martinez could just pot shot him all day now like he does. And, the fight changed after that cut. The fight changed. And Martinez now started having success. But before that cut happened, Pavlik was having a lot of success. Had Pavlik not received that cut in that position where the blood was just leaking straight into his eye, we may have had a different fight. And I'm not saying Martinez couldn't have won, but we may have had a different fight. Anyway, the main point is that Pavlik showed that Martinez wasn't invincible. Because Martinez, somewhat like Pacquiao, after he knocked out Paul Williams, everyone is thinking Martinez is invincible. And it's like, relax, because even the fights he went on to fight after that, it's like, relax. A couple years ago, the guy fought Pavlik, and you forget the success that Pavlik was having against him. Kelly Pavlik. You forget the success he was having against Sergio Martinez before that unfortunate cut happened. But it's like people just sort of like to forget about that fight and don't really look at the fight for what it is or break it down technically or overall clear analysis of the fight. They just kind of, you refer back to the Kelly Pavlik fight and they go, oh yeah, he beat Pavlik. He had Pavlik leaking all crazy with the blood. But you know what? It was a bad cut above Pavlik's face, but the blood made the fight look, it was almost illusional. The blood made the fight look a lot worse than it was. The reality of it was, before that cut, Pavlik was winning rounds and giving Martinez a lot of problems in there. But, people don't remember it that way. They just see the blood, and it alludes to the fact that, Martinez was fucking Pavlik up. and that's not what happened, man. I could go on with these ghost fights. We could go all the way back into our little time machine and go back to the days where fighters fought for 15 rounds. We could go all the way back. People don't like to hear about it. When Duran quit against Sugar Ray Leonard that one time, a fight that people wanted to forget about. We could take it closer to our era when Castillo beat Mayweather clearly in the first fight. And until this day, fans don't want to talk about it. Flomers in particular, they just want to forget about that fight. They'll say Floyd won it. It was close. Floyd won it by a point. Man, Floyd didn't win it by no point. He clearly lost by more than 2 points to Castillo. Everybody's scorecard may be different for that fight, but I think everybody can agree that Castillo at least won that fight by 2 points. I don't see how the hell you can give that fight to Floyd. At best, you call it a draw. And even that, I think, is not even... I don't even see the fight being a draw from my perspective. But it is what it is. Every great fighter, I'm sure, has that one fight that's iffy that possibly could have went the other guy's way. It happens to all fighters besides Edwin Valero. Edwin Valero was a bad motherfucker. He knocked out all his opponents. Rest in peace to him. But, and there's other guys, obviously, that are undefeated, like Joe Calzaghe. But you could question his win against Bernard Hopkins. I'm sure that's a fight that Joe Calzaghe might just want to forget when he faced B-Hop. No wonder he took so long to come to the States and fight at light heavyweight. He didn't catch Roy Jones when he was in his prime. He could have caught him in his prime, but he stayed over there on his side of the world for a reason, He came to America at the right time. It was all about timing. So, his fight with B-Hop was a fight that, it's objective on what you're looking for, but it's one of them fights